commonly known fact that triads were responsible for the death of the late, great Grandmaster Bruce Lee. I don't know why everyone is avoiding this fact. I think they just don't come from that generation. This is absolutely 100% what happened. And this goes back to the fight between him and my Sifu, my original teacher of 2 years, Wong Jack Man. And given my love of Sijo and Grandmaster Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do and Kung Fu these days, if I had known what I know now back then when Wong Jack Man was teaching me, I would have grilled him. But when you think about it, there was so many accounts of Bruce Lee being on screen tests and other situations in life, having no emotional control whatsoever. I'm not trying to judge the guy at all, but he was wild. He cheated on his wife. He did every form of drug you can imagine. He was a brilliant philosopher. He went through every type of mental and spiritual and physical life experience that one could really go through. I mean, this guy had a really rich life. And what happened is the triads were really upset at the time. Keep in mind, this is 70 years ago. This is 60 years ago already that he passed away. This is a different era. Martial arts were not taught to Westerners. There were no karate schools. There were no kung fu schools. This was a secret of, I'm not going to say the O word because Asians were referred to as Orientals back then. Even great Grandmaster Bruce Lee uses the term in his books to describe Oriental thinking and the Oriental, namely the Asian American. What's so ironic is that Grandmaster Bruce Lee destroyed the chop chop coolie, the man who bowed and kowtowed. He created the Asian alpha male. Jeff Chan, MMA shredded, would never have existed in America ever if not for great Grandmaster Bruce Lee. He created cultural pride and dignity and freedom and equality and communication, which gave birth to, film and literature and dance and music and really the renaissance of American culture, really the greatest era of our country, which was, ushered in by these martial artists, musicians, performers, people who were creative in this wonderful age. So if you talk to anybody who's older than me, who was actually alive during that time and around, it's just a commonly known fact. This is the reason why when they talk now about the fight between Wong Jack Man and Sijo and Grandmaster Bruce Lee, again, in my 2 years in the Presidio with Wong Jack Man, I wish I'd asked him more about it. Even though I asked him about it very aggressively, he was very humble and polite. And I really should have sat on him more because when you hear Linda Lee talk about it, she says, oh, Bruce won. So what I liked, and they're editing her interview, and in the midst of it, she's talking about the fight, and then there's music track over it, and then spliced in is her basically giving the exact same speech I gave about how Grandmaster Bruce Lee was the one who ushered in an age of cultural and racial and ethnic equality. So it's so ironic that these triads who had him killed because he was sharing this traditional art with Westerners. And now it's actually, who doesn't put their kid in karate class? And, we have UFC and we have all these things and martial arts films with Jet Li, and people kind of really know what Kung Fu is, and none of that. Great Grandmaster Bruce Lee gave his life for that. Well, he didn't give his life. He gave it. He was murdered. He was murdered because at that time it was seen as this is our great treasure. This is what is going to protect us from the outsider. It wasn't seen as this is the art that's literally going to melt down the wall, so there is no us and them, so that we are them and they are we. So it's a very tragic story. And then when I hear people talking about it and saying, I'm getting back to his wife's interview when she's saying he definitely won. How many minutes was it? Where did it take place? What was the address? Who was physically there? let's approach this in a scholarly or at least a legal manner, and stop playing music tracks in the back. And she's even hinting to what I say, because in the middle of talking about the fight, she talks about, oh, he was into cultural equality and he would teach every Westerner. And so you're basically hinting at what I'm saying and what everyone else is embarrassed to say, and the reason why they didn't fully investigate his death, and the reason why the truth about it is hidden. You know, he was killed for teaching Kung Fu to the Guaylo, to the Westerner. And it's a horrible, terrible thing, and it should be put out there. And in terms of the fight with Wong Jack Man, there are so many accounts in screen tests, on set, in real life. I mean, talk to Chris Chin, who came on the boat with Grandmaster Bruce Lee, which I have. Like, Bruce Lee knocked people out. He was a street fighter. He was a violent dude who only later in life, after he broke his back, regained some sort of emotional control over himself. He was a fireball. So when Bruce Lee's wife recounts the story that he literally put Wong Jack Man on the ground and said, do you give up? Whatever the Chinese word is. I thoroughly believe that. But I believe that the reason he did that and didn't just knock him out is because he knew that if he knocked him out, it would be so disrespectful that they probably would have murdered him. Maybe even right then and there. So, you know, they talk about technically that I think Bruce Lee just wanted to break his ribs so badly, and he had so much of this Kung Fu, and he didn't have the rib-breaking body shots that he saw in Western boxing. So I hate to rear-engineer thoughts and what people might have said but that's my thinking, that he thinks that he could have stopped the fight more easily with body shots than with headshots against my Sifu, Wong Jack Man, who was a very nice, polite, humble person. But considering the history of everything, it's kind of woeful. What happened to Grandmaster, and the fact that it's so commonly denied. And instead of talking about back fists and side kicks and whether this is viable, we really have to focus on the truth. This person ushered in an entire new era of cultural and racial and ethnic understanding, which helped usher in like the renaissance of American filmmaking, life, cultural revolution. Like, he was in the midst of all that and a key part of it. So it's like when they talk about the greatest, Muhammad Ali. You know, he was the greatest because, not because of any technical things, just, you know, there are people in modern times who are, you know, Tyson Fury is probably just as good as, I mean, if you really know boxing, you know what I'm talking about. Tyson Fury is amazing technically, but as a human being, I mean, I met him, he's a cool guy. I'd love to have a drink with him, but yeah, you know, Muhammad Ali. So my point is, we need to approach great Grandmaster Bruce Lee in the same way. This was 70 years ago that he created this art, that he invented these arts, that he was bringing martial arts into popularity, and by doing so, melting the line between us and them, racially, culturally, geopolitically, you know, entering this kind of like enlightened era of humanitarianism and globalism. So that's why he was such a great man.